There are rumors that have come up to the Hill of a secretive project within the Department of Defense.
I've been in a Twitter war.
All of the 7 mountains of society to be taken over.
Those people in the teachers' unions are Marxist, cultural Marxists, often gay.
We're trying to recruit you to tuck your penis.
If you believe in evolution, why don't you just kill people?
I'm like, well then let's go fight. I'll just kick his ass. How's that?
75, 76, 77. Hey there. Welcome back to the Fever Swamp Review, a podcast from the Colorado Times Recorder. I'm your host, Heidi Beadle, and today we're talking about transgender athletes. I don't know if you're aware, but down here in Colorado Springs, School District 49 recently passed a policy banning transgender athletes from competing in their chosen gender. So no boys and girls sports, no girls and boys sports, just no non-binary people at all. And they've also filed a lawsuit against CHASA, the Colorado High School Athletics Association, because of their lack of clarity in terms of policy on the issue of transgender athletes. CHASA has long kind of left the decision about who can compete up to individual schools and school districts, kind of staying out of this growing culture war phenomenon. But also recently, a number of school districts in Colorado all kind of signed on to this letter, kind of asking CHASA to get involved. And of course, the common denominator with all of those signatories just so happens to be conservative activist and lawyer Brad Miller. But I'm sure that's just kind of an interesting coincidence, right? So District 49 has passed one of these policies. It does appear that Colorado Springs School District 11 is quickly on the heels of that. Last week, they introduced a policy, and there was kind of like a protest from LGBT community advocates. I went out to take a look at that, so here's kind of a quick clip.
No peace! No transphobia in our streets! Because being school and stuff. Teach love, not hate! 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 Teach love, not hate!
So can you tell me what brings you out here today?
So we are standing up to Jason Jorgensen's and the D11 board's two policies that are focused against the LGBTQ plus community, policy IMD and policy JBA. IMD focusing on allowing pride flags of any kind in schools. It's said to be focusing on all flags minus the United States, Colorado, and military and academic flags, but then the focus is being put towards pride flags as it appears. The other thing as well is with the JBA, making it where trans students cannot take part in sports teams and cannot use the locker room to which they identify as. Both policies which would ultimately be unconstitutional and against the law due to federal cases such as Title IX and Amendment 14. But then also from the Colorado Anti-Discrimination Act, as well for IND, just the fact that it's against the Tinker versus Des Moines case of the Supreme Court. And so we're out here making a stand saying these are not legal, these are not right, these are not moral, and they're not supporting all our students.
Gotcha. So the trans athletes thing, it's been in the news a lot. Can you kind of, what's, the case for allowing trans athletes to compete? How do you respond? Like it's being phrased as, boys and girls sports and this kind of thing. What's your response to that?
So like I just said, it's already been ruled in courts. So again, like the Title IX, I actually have the list of courts and stuff, the cases on my phone. So if you want those, I can give them to you. But it's ultimately against federal regulations already that have been put in place. Ones that state against and already federal court court cases that trans people are identified by their gender identity and not by their birth gender. And so ultimately these court cases have ruled already that schools have to respect students by their gender identity. and they can't put it back to saying their preferred gender is what you have. We have to respect that. We can't put it back to saying that schools can only respect their gender at birth, if that makes sense.
Sure. How do you respond to the kind of arguments that they make that, this impacts fairness in sports and it disadvantages women and those kind of talking points that we hear a lot?
Yeah, so it's already been shown through science that trans people, they don't, yes, trans women do have somewhat of a difference. Going through hormones, it's been shown through science it can reduce their strengths. It can reduce many of the things that they already have in place compared to cisgender males. And so to say that this is not fair because it's not fair to have trans kids in sports, science has already shown that that's debunked, that's not the case. Trans people, there's been for years trans people have done it in different sports, and it hasn't affected them until recently when it became a focus from the Trump administration and targeted attacks from conservatives.
Gotcha. And you're also running for school board, right? Can you talk a little bit about your campaign and your qualifications and stuff?
Yeah, so I'm running for the D11 board based on the fact that we have had too many people who have on our board lately have bring dishonesty. They've been I don't know how you'd say the opposite of transparent, but they haven't been transparent. And
transphobic.
Yeah, that. But then they also have not been, they haven't been focusing on the revitalization of all our schools. So those are my biggest three issues: is honesty, transparency, and revitalization of District 11. Focusing on being honest with our educators, our staff members, and supporting them in all ways. Being transparent about our funds, such as they originally were saying that the funding to go to reproduce UCCS college space to make the college space school of technology, they originally were pulling from the mill levy override fund. And later on, when it was brought to attention and people asking me nonstop of why are you pulling from this fund when that wasn't negotiated to that, that's when they pulled back and said, oh no, we're pulling it from the general fund, not the mill levy override. And then they changed the wording after that to say from the general fund. And then lastly, revitalization. They're focusing on opening up new schools, different schools and places, instead of focusing on our schools that need fixed. Yes, it's great that they're fixing Palmer High School. Palmer High School has been neglected for years. Now it needs to come back into where are we focusing on all schools. All our schools have heating and air conditioning issues. All our schools have overcapacity issues. We have a lot of different concerns that are going on in our schools that District 11 hasn't met yet to succeed in making sure students are getting what they supported. As far as how I'm qualified for it, I'm a D11 alumni. I graduated. This year's my 10-year alumni, or my 10-year anniversary graduating. Go Terrors. And so that's one of the biggest things. I also used to take part on the D11 Mill Levy Override Oversight Committee. I took part on that for about 2 years until I could no longer do it due to my work schedule and the schedule when the meetings took place, so I did step away from that. But those types of things, as well as just hearing these concerns from our community. I'm a community member who's been here, who's been seeing these things, who's been fighting for these things for a long time, and it's not something that I took a seat back, so.
Gotcha. Well, and in addition to D11, it does also appear as if District 20 is considering its own kind of policy as well. And it makes sense, right? District 49, District 11, and Academy School District 20 have all been targeted heavily in recent years by conservative activists, by Cole Communications and various entities. And they flipped to this majority conservative board governance, and they've been, enacting policies in line with conservative priorities. Also, next year is a school board election year, so we can expect all of the rhetoric around transgender athletes and pornographic books and Satan in the classroom. It's gonna be bananas, and I'm really not looking forward to it. And so going back to what Joseph Shelton, right? D11 school board candidate, kind of perennial D11 school board candidate, was kind of arguing there, right? I've covered this before, actually. The debate over transgender athletes, absolutely not new. In 2017, then Colorado Representative Shane Sandridge ran a bill trying to ban trans athletes in school level sports, and I did kind of a big study on it, or a big story on it. I talked with Sandridge, and I interviewed a transgender cyclist named Jillian Bearden, who competes and who took part in some of the Olympic studies around trans athletes, right? And they kind of measured her performance and things like her VO2 max, and what it kind of boils down to, right? The main argument is that actually transgender athletes are kind of at a disadvantage, right? Essentially, right? So you go through male puberty, yes, and then you transition medically, and that involves kind of blocking testosterone production and then introducing estrogen, right? And while there absolutely are sex-based differences in athletic performance. In fact, I'm going to include a video here from Dr. Mike at Renaissance Periodization kind of talking about some of these things. But the argument is that hormone replacement therapy mitigates a number of these advantages, and in the case of transgender women, actually kind of puts them at a disadvantage, right? Because yes, men have larger skeletons and denser bones, and with testosterone they have more muscle production, but without testosterone, that kind of muscle strength factor is in line with what you see with cisgender women, but you still have like the skeletal system, right? So the analogy that I was given was, it's like putting like a 4-cylinder engine in a Ford F-150, which I realize is maybe not flattering for trans people, but right. So they actually have to kind of work harder to achieve the same level of performance as transgender women. And a number of studies, right? People have studied things, not just strength, but like VO2 max and all of these other factors. And recent studies continue to kind of bear this out, right? But one thing that I realized as a transgender person is that I can kind of challenge this assumption, right? I can go and I can see if this natural advantage that transgender athletes have is also applicable to me, right? So I'm certainly not an athletic person, despite what my cool Adidas tracksuit might convey. But I have for the last 2 years. We have a YMCA membership. I've been going to the Y. We've been working out and doing kind of like a generic sort of like bro split, doing weight training and hitting kind of all the major muscle groups. And at the YMCA, they have like a leaderboard, right? For like the kind of powerlifting, like the big 3 lifts, the bench press, the deadlift, and the squat. And everybody can kind of put their numbers and their statistics up there. And right now it is kind of a sausage fest. But there is one lady at our YMCA who she's been going at least as long as we have. Like she has presumably been there before us. She is quite, jacked. She's got like kind of the powerlifter physique. She's kind of our like gym nemesis, right? I mean, not really. She's nice and is fine, whatever. But she's the one woman at our YMCA who has like done the 3 lifts and has her numbers on the board. And so for her bench press, her max was 185. So I went to the Y and I was like, well, let me see if I can hit this number. And I am not competitive, right? I'm old. So I've been, very, very conservative in like the weight that I'm doing. I don't want to injure myself. In addition to being old, I also have a history of like musculoskeletal injuries. I've broken my arm and my pelvis, and I'm full of like bolts and plates and stuff. So I tend to take it kind of easy. I do more lighter weight, higher reps, as opposed to like, traditional kind of power lifter, 1 rep max kind of things. But I went to the Y to see if I could hit 185, and here is that attempt. Ready? There you have it. Wow. And to be quite honest, like the 185 was kind of easy. Like I probably could have got like 200, maybe 225, right? But so this proves a point, right? Like just a very generic transgender person who very casual about their workout and only been doing it for 2 years. I could just walk into the gym and I can at least tie, because as we know from the Riley Gaines, Leah Thomas situation, transgender people don't actually win, we just tie. And that creates all the controversy, right? But I can at least tie with this woman who very like motivated and focused and has been doing this, I'm assuming, longer than I have. Right, and that's kind of the argument, right, that people make, is that transgender athletes, that they have this natural advantage and they can just come in and they can take over the sports and like dominate it, because while maybe they're not at the same level as men. And if you look at the board, right, like 185 is like the second to lowest number. Like somebody got 175, and I'm pretty sure it was a teenager. But all the other like kind of adult men are 200s, some of them in 300s, right? So as a transgender person, I feel like my strength is like obviously at the low end of the male category, but kind of in the upper tier of the female category. And that's potentially, in a competitive sense, like unfair. And so I don't know, to try to like talk some of these things through, I decided to go, I went and I worked out and did an interview with the most jacked, masculine person I know, a gay Republican. I'm here with Garrett Flicker, formerly of the Log Cabin Republicans, and we just finished a pretty sick chest workout. It was awesome. So it was. So how long have you been doing kind of fitness stuff? Give me a breakdown of your
I got into fitness back in my freshman year in college. Started lifting with a buddy of mine, but really within and that was about 10, 12 years ago now. But now been lifting with a buddy. I started lifting with a couple people here about 3 years ago, and it's really put on a lot of progress. They're just very dedicated folks. So I would say it started 10 years ago, but it really became more than that 3 years ago.
Gotcha. So with your experience in kind of the fitness world, this episode we're talking about trans athletes and competition and issues around that. What is, like, some people say, like, oh, trans people, it doesn't matter, and other people are like, this is obviously unfair. Kind of tell me, what's your position? What do you know about it?
Well, I mean, I think you kind of know how I stand on some things.
Sure.
I think in women's sports competing against women, I do believe it's unfair. With that being said, though, I think fitness is something that everyone should have access to. I mean, fitness is what makes people feel good. It's why we do. It's why you hit this chest day with me. So it's not something that should ever be excluded by, regarding pursuing, your exercise kind of based dreams. But, when it comes to those team sports, I do believe in a certain amount of fairness at play. And I think there is a biological edge that you have being male over, biologically female. So, when it comes to the sports, I'm kind of a no, but when it comes to general fitness, I'm a yes for it.
Sure. So with the sports and with can we get into the nitty gritty a little here? Like, what is it that would give someone, and just because I've been doing this for this episode, talking about myself, doing various fitness things, my body produces no testosterone. I've been cross-sex hormones for 10 years. What advantages do I still have, or would someone in my position still have?
I still think you have your overall muscle and your strength. And I could tell just by lifting with you. Heidi, you're strong as hell. It's awesome. It was awesome with you. Yeah. But that's not traditional biological woman strength. Usually when I'm working out with women, even with my people that power lift and stuff, 185 is a big number. So that's what I mean by there is an innate strength. Even I think without some of those hormones, I think there's just a bone density, an overall underlying muscle kind of density that does give you still more strength at the end of the day. I think that was demonstrated in our kick-ass workout today.
Yeah, my wife made fun of me. She was like, "You're too competitive to make the point I think that you want to make."
That's how I was like, this is a very interesting conversation we're having. Just being honest with you, I was kind of I'm like, this is very interesting because how I stand on things. I'm more conservative with some of my approaches. So, it's almost like you're proving me right, but that's okay in a way because it still shows that I think once again fitness is something that anyone can do and should do, and I'm a big believer in it. I think I don't care who you are, what station you are in life. I think you should work out to some degree, or at least try.
And so let's talk a little bit about advantages, disadvantages. Even among same-sex kind of groups of people, right? In a sport like weightlifting, for example, right? There are kind of natural advantages and disadvantages based on body types, right? Shorter people have greater mechanical advantage than taller people, right?
Yeah, I definitely think, some people definitely do have some genetic baselines. It's the same thing with, you look at dogs, a Chihuahua's going to be totally different than a Great Dane, even though they're of, the same genome or whatever. But it's the same thing with humans. I'm a big dude. I'm 280 pounds. There are some people that we were lifting with today that are 170, and some of them can keep up with us, as you can see. Douglas was pretty strong in there, and but most of the time, I think there is some historic kind of genetic makeup that plays a part into it too. I think genetic background does just, where your ancestors evolved from. I come from an Eastern European background and Middle Eastern background, and those are some bigger people historically. So weightlifting just kind of came natural to me.
Gotcha. And so in team sports, though, right now the big kind of controversy in sort of conservative spaces, there's a softball team, and they had a trans girl who is pitching in the softball position. Should it just be no trans people in women's sports whatsoever, or I don't know. And I don't mean to be misogynistic or judgy. You don't really think of softball as being it's one of the sports where you think it wouldn't make that much of a difference, right? Or am I wrong?
It just depends. It really just depends on when it comes to people in sports. I'm still going to lead towards no, because there is still a difference at the end of the day. And the reason why I get kind of picky about it, because there's a lot of futures at stake for it, and there's a lot of people that have trained for a really long time for those types of things that don't have quite that edge, that then it's kind of squandered. They would have taken first, they would have had a full ride scholarship, but now they're not going to have access to that. I think there's a lot of opportunity stripped away because women's sports are meant for biological women, and I think it's one of the ways that we allow for women to have access to kind of sporting events and do things that aren't sciences or the arts. I think it's kind of their area, and I think that's important to maintain. I know a lot of female athletes, and almost every female athlete, especially the ones I work out with, do not want to face off against a trans opponent. They know they can't. And I have my good friend Maddie, who just moved from here. We've talked at length about that. She goes, really strong, Gary. I'm a really strong individual. into them and lift the same amount. I just don't have that physique.
Do you know, like, is she stronger than you?
She's pretty strong. I don't know. We might have to have a lift off
Do some like Andy Kaufman
when she's back in town. That could be kind of fun. I'm actually open to that. I think it's some lifts. I think you have her beat on the bench. She might have you beat on the deadlift. She's pretty strong. She does 315 on that.
Oh, I'm doing 225 right now on the deadlift.
You'll get there though. You'll get there.
And so, obviously, the conservative consensus is that yes, it does have kind of an advantage. But I did some looking, right? And like, I am sort of on social media and YouTube, and I look at gym content and, try to see what's going on. So this is a clip. This lady, she's like 18 years old, and she's 130 some pounds, and she's got a 250 bench press, which is quite impressive.
Got the fits on my ass and a look cause they think I'm the one who behind the blocks and shit. I'm just focused on me. They say my last tape was a classic, but I got some hotter shit. I be rocking this shit. I'm not up with this. Don't you follow me? Talk with the
So she is definitely stronger than me. But fitness influencer Lean Beef Patty, right, who I'm a big fan of, she did a powerlifting meet, right, and she benched 176. So I'm as strong as, YMCA gym nemesis. I'm stronger than Lean Beef Patty. And there was recently kind of a controversy in Canada over a Canadian powerlifter, a trans person who competed in the female category, and she had like a bench press of 296. And a lot of people, again, upset that, she won and did all these things. But actually, the world record for women's powerlifting bench press is this lady named Jennifer Thompson, and she's done 315, which is incredible, right? Good for her. But that is just the point that I'm making, right? Is that it continues to be a spectrum, right? So yes, I am anecdotally maybe stronger than this one lady at the Y, but also there are cis women who are stronger than me still. And if I, and there's a difference between kind of elite level athletes and sort of your average amateur people, and even, high school athletes, right? So if I like devoted myself and really locked in my diet and really, worked on my form and really, really pushed myself and did all of the science things that you have to do and just devoted a ton of time and money to it, maybe I could hit 315, right? But again, like that's like the top for women. While I was working out with Garrett, there was a dude in there that hit like 405. And it's also important to kind of consider in these discussions too, right? We look at just numbers, right? Like, oh, I did this but one measure of strength is also kind of like your bench press in relation to your body weight, right? So the lady that's like 130 pounds and does, 175, right? Like, I don't want to speculate about anybody's weight, right? Sorry. But, Lean Beef Patty did 175. Way more impressive than me, who I am large, doing 185, right? Like, strength-wise, like in the ratio of body weight to the work that you're doing, way stronger than me. And that 18-year-old girl who did like 259 or whatever, like, incredible. The bulk, and again, the bulkier trans powerlifter who did 296, like that ratio is much smaller. Whereas, Jennifer Thompson and her 314, again, awesome, right? But when we talk about athletics, we talk about sports, it's not just strength, right? You look at soccer or volleyball or, basketball, right? Like, it's not just like big muscle people. There's also this kind of cardiovascular element, right? And that's where things like your VO2 max come into play. And that, I'm not an exercise scientist, but my general understanding, it's like the ratio of how like efficiently your body turns like the oxygen into carbon dioxide and like metabolic rate and all of this stuff, right? Because another point that people make is, well, you know, men have larger lungs than women, so transgender women, you know, they can breathe better and whatever, right? So to put that to a test, I decided to do a 5K, not just any 5K, the Walk for Life 5K here in Colorado Springs. So we're going to take a look at that.
All sewn up with bad tattoos, all bit up, nothing to lose. Well, I've been a fool.
Good morning, everyone. I am at the Walk for Life, the annual fundraising event for Life Network, and I'm running in the 5K. I am number 6. And as a trans athlete, my prediction is that I'm going to dominate the race completely, right? Because that's what everyone says. So I'm looking at all the women here and I'm like, I'm going to beat that person. I'm going to beat that person. I might even beat some men today, you know? It's the world is my oyster, and as a trans person, I love oysters. So yeah.
For oh so long, did he hope their home is gone? Now the Mississippi's mud cakes my boots. I'm afraid that I might drown if I don't move from these waters that run so deep, from these southern ways lazy heat. And now I'm stuck. Like I'd put to show. With little luck.
So obviously, when we talk about walking for life, it means that the proceeds are going toward life in Colorado Springs. And every day, we know that there are women and men facing overwhelming decisions and whether or not to move ahead with a pregnancy. We get the opportunity in schools to talk to students about what it looks like to engage in relationships in a healthy way. And we get to come alongside parents and support them when they are on their parenting journey. So I want to make sure that you all know we have a Get Involved tent here this morning. And if you're interested in volunteering, if you're interested in becoming a monthly partner, that is where you can go. And if you sign up to be a monthly partner today, you will get a handsome I Help Save Lives mug. So be sure and check that out. Okay, with that, straight ahead in front of me is Congressman Jeff Crank's tent. And there we have some flags, and we are going to say the Pledge of Allegiance. So would you...
My prediction is I'm going to beat all of them.
Okay, are we all ready? Everyone at the start line. Okay, on your marks, get set, go!
Watch me go. I got torn up knees and calloused fingertips, broken vocal cords, busted lips. This goddamn guitar's never quite in tune. I leave it behind if it weren't all I could do. Now
So clearly, running is not my thing, right? Like I did not dominate that race. It was actually kind of embarrassing. But you know what? I did it. Okay. And I don't know if this proves any point, right? Like I'm not a runner. A lot of people do like a couch to 5K sort of build up that takes 7 weeks or whatever. I pitched this podcast idea like less than a month before I ran the 5K and just signed up and did it. So I guess in that way it is kind of impressive, right? The natural transgender athletic ability to complete it, there it is. But I guess the point of all this, right? This conversation around transgender athletes. And, I also, while I was there, I also had the chance to talk to Representative Jeff Crank about this whole issue. So I'm going to play that real quick. But like the Trump administration, they've given guidance around Title IX and transgender people competing in sports. Do you have a position on that?
I do. I think, women's sports should be for women. Men's sports should be for men. I'm not opposed to there being some different category or something like that. But I have a daughter, and I have continually hear from people who have daughters who are losing to me in sports, and losing everything from tuition and scholarships and things like that, because they've got this unfair competition.
So when it comes down to it, right, what's the verdict on the whole trans athlete debate? Well, I'm not entirely sold that trans people have this natural advantage in sports, right? And I'm not even sure it's really about sports, right? Because if you listen to the narratives around trans people, right, we're too good for sports, but we're not good enough to be in the military. And the conversation around these things is sort of like, it's important to know who the players are in this, right? We look at these athletes. We look at these like lawsuits around the trans athlete issue. Who do we see? The Alliance Defending Freedom, which has ties to the Heritage Foundation and obviously kind of the broader Christian right? And a big part of the narrative here is that, men and women are radically different, and men are so much stronger and women are so much weaker, and trans people are just messing it up. And this is part, like, not to go like gender studies professor here, but this is a little bit of what you might call misogyny at play here, right? As we talked about with like the female power lifters, I think what happens in our society, we tend to overestimate how incredibly strong and powerful men are and underestimate how strong women are. And this is a narrative that, the broader Christian right is very kind of interested in pushing, right? There is, as we kind of talked about some of these Christian entities, particularly like the Southern Baptist Convention right now, they've been talking about whether women should even be pastors and like the role of women. And if you look at some of these conservative Christian influencers, right, like Matt Walsh might be sort of on the more visible side, but it gets like more kind of extreme as you go. And it is sort of like extreme patriarchy, right? Women, not only should women not be pastors, but they shouldn't really work outside of the home, right? Women also shouldn't, some of these guys are like, women shouldn't even be able to vote, right? Like repeal the 19th Amendment. And we're seeing this kind of thing play out in, the abortion debate, right? Because they're not just going after abortion, right? But now they're also going after medication abortion through mifepristone, and they're trying to repeal that. But they're also, again, like, it's just the tip of the iceberg. Like, they're also if they get the chance, will go after just contraception in general, right? The pill. In the Hobby Lobby case, which removed the contraceptive provisions of the Affordable Care Act, they argued successfully, right? The Supreme Court, approved it, that birth control pills have an abortifacient mechanism, right? So if the extreme right gets its way and they make abortion illegal, they will then be able to also go after contraceptive pills kind of on this grounds, right? And again, women are weak and they are not as capable and they can't make these decisions. And so the patriarchal right has to step in, right? And I'm not trying to do like the lib thing and be like, oh, Handmaid's Tale and blah, blah, blah. But this argument over trans people and whether they can compete in sports or participate in public life or anything else is sort of like the first domino in kind of a chain that might ultimately lead to someone's patriarchal Christian interpretation of how society should function. So just a thing to keep in mind, right? And also, again, like the focus on these sorts of issues are like broadly targeted specifically at transgender women, right? No one really cares about like trans men, which is interesting because there aren't a ton of trans male athletes who are like competing. But one notable guy is Chris Mosier, who he's like an endurance athlete. He does like diathlon stuff. And, it's interesting because if we talk about sex-based differences, right? One of the things that women are kind of better at than men are endurance sports, right? Long distance running. They do not accumulate systemic fatigue in the way that men do, right? So for a transgender male endurance athlete, like you could make the argument that he does have this like unnatural advantage because of his like innate woman DNA or what, like muscle fibers, whatever the argument is, but no one cares, right? Like it's whatever. And in 2023, he won, a race in the men's division and he's an Olympic athlete and he's done great things, right? But the focus is just on trans people, right? And it's just on trans people when they reach a certain level, right? Like obviously no one cares what I do because I am not going to win anything. But, Leah Thomas, who didn't even win, who tied with Riley Gaines, these other trans athletes that are able to win, they get a lot of scrutiny and a lot of pushback, whereas, all the mediocre trans people, no one wants to point out like all the times trans people lose. And another reason that these kind of bans and discussions are harmful is because even if you ban every trans person, right? Like what this also does, you have this blowback effect on cisgender women who happen to be non-conforming, right? There was that case of like I believe it was a school board that like called a female athlete like trans and it created this crazy firestorm around her. She was not trans, but it puts kind of gender non-conforming people, like more masculine, more kind of butch women, under the microscope in a way that's kind of unfair. And we saw this kind of play out with Amani Khalef and the Algerian boxer, women's boxer, and a lot of people talking about chromosomes and like, well, she's really, XY and all of these things. And I don't know. I don't buy that woke Algeria is sending transgender athletes to the Olympics. But it also just highlights the differences in the spectrum of humanity, right? Like even within the category of woman, right? You have some women who are taller, who are bigger, women like Alana Maher, who, rugby player, she gets a lot of scrutiny and criticism, and it's unfair, and it's ridiculous because people just have brain worms over this whole trans athlete thing. And it trickles down to like school boards, right? And school sports. And I have maybe an interesting perspective on this because I grew up in a very small rural community. My graduating class had 63 people in it, and I played soccer in high school. I was also a cheerleader, which is an interesting, like, gender appropriate kind of detail about me. But I played soccer, and soccer was not like, it was all football and basketball, right? Like, no one cares about soccer. And so our soccer league in high school was co-ed. Like, there were girls on our team. We played against other teams that had girls on the team, and nobody really cared, and there were some teams that didn't have any girls and some teams that had more girls, and but it wasn't a big issue, right? But something like that today, like, I think people would sort of lose their minds. And part of this thing with, like, trans athletes, right? It's the discussion about whether trans people should even be allowed in public, like whether we should have to accommodate these weird freaks, because the vast majority of of athletes, right, cis, straight men, women, right, do not go on to get scholarships and compete at this high level. The vast majority of athletes just have fun playing the game and being part of a team and interacting socially, right? And so banning transgender athletes from these positions is just another way of excluding trans people from public life. Which, again, maybe that's the point. I don't know. But it's a bummer, right? And also, maybe, just maybe, right, higher education and, opportunities and scholarships and all of these things, maybe it shouldn't be like some kind of weird athletic Hunger Games situation. I don't know. If you like this podcast, if you don't like the podcast, please subscribe to our channel, give us a like, leave a comment, follow us on social media. We're on Facebook, we're on Instagram, we're on Blue Sky, we're on TikTok, we're on some other platforms. Give us a follow, leave a review, whatever you can, let us know. Also, just a reminder, this reporting, my participation in various regional 5Ks is all made possible thanks to the generous donations of viewers and readers like you. So if you appreciate the Colorado Times Recorder's journalism, please consider going to coloradotimesrecorder.com and making a tax-deductible donation to our nonprofit newsroom. Until next time, folks, stay safe out there.